Greetings, Magic players. This is Steve from Untapped Games, and I am going to open our last, unfortunately, sealed product from the Theros block. This is the Journey into Nyx event deck. It's called Wrath of the Mortals, and I haven't really looked at the deck list yet, but I'm going to guess from Wrath of the Mortals that it's going to be it sounds like a heroic themed deck, and that's also going off of the cover here is a Battlefield Thaumaturge art. So there's blue, I believe there's also red in it. So I'm looking at, based on Battlefield Thaumaturge, probably some heroic cards that are, you know, cards that target creatures. So we have this Journey into Nyx deck box with the Planeswalker symbol on the back. Here is a pack, I think of, this is probably the sideboard to the deck. I have this spin down counter with the Theros, the Journey into Nyx symbol on it. That's cool. I've got a Rules of Magic, Basics of Magic poster here. It has the color identities, the battlefield, etc. And I have a Journey into Nyx specific poster that talks about Magic tournaments and events, because the purpose of this product is to be able to just walk into a store with this deck during tournament night, for any current standard rotation tournament, and to just be able to just play right out of the box. And then there's a deck list right there. And here's the deck itself. I also got this divider. So because I haven't checked out this deck list, I don't know if it's as good. It's probably not going to be as good as the last deck, the Born of the Gods event deck. I think Herald of the Underworld, I believe it was called, was really amazing. It was so amazing, if you bought 3 of them, you pretty much had like a top tier tournament deck, just by having 4 of all the cards that you needed to have 4 of, etc. Because then you just basically had a what do you call it? It was viable. It just had so many good cards in it. So I'd be surprised if they kept doing that, just because they want to keep things relatively balanced as far as. The other thing is that they make these decks before the set releases, so they don't get to see the meta beforehand. So you know, this is a blue-red deck. I don't know whether blue-red is even in the current standard meta, but so we got some young pyromancers. So yeah, that also indicates to me that there's going to be some instants and sorceries to take advantage of heroic stuff, or burn. Maybe it's like mass burn. Battlefield Thaumaturge. Each instant and sorcery spell you cast costs 1 less to cast for each creature it targets. So and its heroic is whenever you cast a spell that targets him, he gains hexproof until end of turn. So the idea with that, I guess, is he's gonna make all your spells cheaper, and then he's going to, if you run the risk of losing that synergy, you can just target him, and then he'll gain hexproof, so that people's targeted removal on him doesn't work. Got 3 gutter snipes. Those also work really well with the basic deck paradigm that I'm thinking this has. So we'll see when we get to the instants and sorceries. So running with that theme, so Young Pyromancer, every time you're casting instants or sorceries, you're putting little 1/1 red elementals onto the battlefield, and then Gutter Snipe is pinging your opponents each time you cast an instant or sorcery spell. Chandra's Phoenix, Flying and haste. Whenever an opponent is dealt damage by a red instant or sorcery spell you control, or by a red planeswalker you control, return Chandra's Phoenix from your graveyard to your hand. Spellheart Chimera, 4 of them. Flying, trample. Spellheart Chimera's power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in your graveyard. Sensing a theme. Ogre Battle Driver, 2 and 2 red. For an Ogre Warrior, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, that creature gains +2/+0 and gains haste until the end of turn. So that works really well with Young Pyromancer, because all the little 1/1s that come out are going to be 3/1s that turn, and they have haste. So that turns, you know, like if you cast like a shock, not only is it incoming 2 damage, now it's incoming 5 damage instead, if they don't respond somehow. Oracle of Bones, 2 and 2 red for a Minotaur Shaman with haste, and he has Tribute 2. At this creature enters the battlefield, an opponent of your choice may place 2 +1/+1 counters on it. When Oracle of Bones enters the battlefield, if tribute wasn't paid, you may cast an instant or sorcery card from your hand without paying its mana cost. So get some free burn. Yeah, so it's looking like it's burn here. And Aetherling, which is a good card. It's a nice tool card. 4 and 2 blue. Exile Aetherling for 1 blue mana, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. Another blue mana ability is Aetherling is unblockable this turn. For 1 colorless, Aetherling gets +1/-1 until end of turn, and for 1 colorless, Aetherling gets -1/+1 until end of turn, and he starts off at 4/5. So that guy is very, very good at, well, he's good at a lot of things actually, but he becomes a huge threat when you have plenty of mana to do stuff with him. We got 4 lightning strikes, so right off the bat, if you have Battlefield Thaumaturge out, the lightning strike is basically a lightning bolt, so that's good. Just because there's 1 target, so that's 1 less mana that you have to pay. Same thing with Magma Jet. Deals 2 damage to target creature or player, scry 2. So you can, if you have all your pieces in play, then you can just line up with scry your next burn spells that you need to have. And now here's where it gets kind of serious, I guess, is with Mizium Mortars. Mizium Mortars deals 4 damage to target creature you don't control, and that's for 1 and a red. And then for an overload, you may cast this spell for its overload cost. If you do, change its text by replacing all instances of target with each. Unfortunately, that doesn't have any synergy with Battlefield Thaumaturge, but it does with everything else. With the Gutter Snipe and the Young Pyromancer and Spellheart Chimera, etc. So that's really good. It's a good board wipe for a lot of, well, for boards that have 4 toughness or lower creatures, I guess. Searing Blood. This is a good card. Searing Blood deals 2 damage to target creature. When that creature dies this turn, Searing Blood deals 3 damage to the creature's controller, and that's for 2 red. So that's a good card for early game, especially when they're just putting out weak creatures. You can just get rid of them and be chipping away at your opponent as well. Flames of the Firebrand for 2 and a red. Flames of the Firebrand deals 3 damage, divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and or players. Applications with Thaumaturge are pretty obvious there. I've got 2 Divinations. For 2 and a blue, draw 2 cards. Anger of the Gods, 1 and 2 red. For a sorcery, Anger of the Gods deals 3 damage to each creature. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. And we have 1 Harnessed by Force, 1 and 2 red for a sorcery. This has the Strive mechanic. Harness by Force costs 2 and a red more to cast for each target beyond the first. Gain control of any number of target creatures until the end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. So it's basically the Strive version of what's that card? God, I forgot this card before too. It's not Traitorous Instinct, but yeah, I'm gonna forget it again. Steam Augury, 2, a blue and a red. Instant, reveal the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. An opponent chooses one of those piles. Put that pile into your graveyard and the other into your put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So it's you know, that's a pretty good card. It kind of depends upon your opponent being dumb, or you know, sort of top decking cards that are an interesting mix of, you know, good and really good, or I don't know. That's a tricky card to be useful, because there's almost always going to be a much better choice and a much worse choice. Not that it's a bad card, because it's basically, you know, you're still drawing cards, you're rooting through your deck that way. Fated Conflagration for 1 and 3 red. Fated Conflagration, oh god, talk Steve. Fated Conflagration deals 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. If it's your turn, scry 2. That's pretty good. 5 damage is powerful for 1 card. Turn and Burn, 2 and a blue. I've got 2 of these. 2 and a blue for turn, and it's an instant. Target creature loses all abilities and becomes a 0/1 red weird until end of turn. And Burn is deals 2 damage to target creature or player. And it also, you can fuse them together by paying both halves at once. So you can, you know, turn something into a red weird and then immediately burn it, or you could turn something that you're currently blocking with a 1/1 even, and then burn a player or another creature. So those are good cards. Or that is a good card. Is it Guild Gates, just for the mana fixing, and some mountains. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mountains. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 islands. So that's the deck. Now let's move on to what's in the sideboard. You got 2 Elixir of Immortalities. They're one mana artifacts, pretty standard for 2, and then you tap, you gain 5 life. Shuffle Elixir of Immortality in your graveyard into their owner's library. So that's, I guess the thought there is that if you go through enough of these instants, if you're facing off against somebody who's, you know, decking you, then Elixir of Immortality can mitigate that, I suppose. I don't know if that's a great inclusion for the sideboard, but especially because your recourse, if they're decking you, is your spell chimeras become humongous. So, and those are main deck, but whatever. I see the thought there. I'm not sure if I'm missing something. You got 2 Dispels. They're counter target instant spell. Those are just that's obviously a sideboard against a similar deck that relies upon instants. Essence Scatter, counter target creature spell. The nice thing about these spells is, you know, well, that's actually a really good question, because counter target creature spell, I wonder if that doesn't work with Battlefield Thaumaturge, because it's target creature spell, not target creature, I believe. Because while it's still on the stack, it doesn't count as a creature. So yeah, now that doesn't work, but it works with all the other cards. So when you're casting Dispel, you're getting a 1/1 elemental. When you're casting Essence Scatter, you're getting a 1/1 elemental, or dealing 2 damage to each opponent, or whatever. 2 negates. So we can basically sub in the counters we need if things get out of hand with your matchup. We got Flames of the Firebrand, which I believe we already have 2 of in here. I believe I might be making that up though. Did I hide it? I thought oh yeah, we do. It's right up here. 2 Flames of the Firebrand. So yeah, that's just more burn. Is it Staticaster? This is so far the only really interesting card that's in the sideboard. 1, a blue and a red for a human wizard with flash and haste. Tap him. Is it Staticaster? Deals 1 damage to target creature and each other creature with the same name as that creature, and he's a 0/3. So, or she is a 0/3. My fault. The nice thing about that is that if they're cranking out 1/1 tokens like you are, then no matter how many of them there are, you can just wipe their field with the Staticaster. So that's kind of an answer to this deck in some ways, because that young Pyromancer, this is the worst nightmare of that young Pyromancer. So that's the deck and the sideboard. This, I am correct in assuming this was not going to be as good as the last one, but it's still workable for if you're going to just get into getting into standard, or if you're getting back into standard after a hiatus and you don't have any standard playable cards. This could work. The Aetherling is a good inclusion. Although I've noticed that a lot of, I don't play standard a lot, but I've noticed that Aetherling tends to be a sideboard card for people who are having trouble getting damage through, because he becomes unblockable. But other than that, I can also see that this would be a fun deck to play, disregarding power level, because counter burn is kind of it's interesting when you're sitting on when it's on your side. When somebody's playing against you, it's not quite as fun, just because burn feels cheesy. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought of this. These event decks, they don't hold surprises for everybody, because you can go and look up the deck list online. But I try to keep myself fairly ignorant to them, just so that I like to share my thoughts with the possible strategy that's behind the decks as I'm opening them, and as I'm sort of grokking the cards as I'm seeing them. So let me know what you think. We still have a contest going on through Facebook, and it's for half a booster box of Journey into Nyx, and all you need to do is go to our Facebook page. That's www.facebook.com/untappedgames, and we have the May contest question up on that timeline there. All you need to do is like it to be entered, and you could be one of 2 people to earn to win the half a booster box of Journey into Nyx, which is super awesome. Yeah, so go do that right now, and let me know what you thought of the video. And until next time, I will see you guys later.